Snowden's revelations about the activities of America's National Security Agency forced him to go on the run and seek sanctuary from US intelligence agencies. It also won him a lot of support and praise, of course, as well. Now, just yesterday, he received the Sam Adams Prize for Integrity and Intelligence. Presenting him with that award was a group of whistleblowers and activists, all of which have unveiled hidden secrets themselves in the past. I'm delighted to say they're joining me now in the studio. Let me introduce them to you. Jesselyn Radack's with us, also Thomas Andrews Drake, Ray McGovern and Coleen Rowley. Thanks, guys, for taking the time to come in. We know you've got a busy schedule here while you're in Moscow. First of all, you saw Edward Snowden last night. How is he? Can I put that to you? How is he?
I think he's doing remarkably well under the circumstances in which he came here.
And we've obviously covered his story extensively on this channel, and so we're obviously keen to find out personally how is he. What does he look like these days?
I thought he looked great. He seemed very centered and brilliant, smart, funny, very engaged. I thought he looked very well.
Considering the amount of pressure he's under, do you think that's taking any toll at all? Any psychological toll?
I think it would in ordinary circumstances, but this is an extraordinary person. He's made his peace with what he did. He's convinced that what he did was right. He has no regrets, and he's willing to face whatever the future holds for him.
Do you agree with that as well? Is that the person you saw in front of you, Coleen?
Yes, actually, we discussed this integrity and intelligence issue quite extensively. And we talked about prior examples of great people in history that had themselves been under this type of pressure, and he's remarkably centered.
Jesselyn, you yourself were a whistleblower, so you all were. But the question, I was sort of talking in the newsroom earlier on, I'm thinking if we were in your position, what would be going through our heads as well? You all did it for various reasons that you thought were right at the time. Have you ever had regrets? Can I put that to you, first of all? Have you ever regretted what you did?
No, never, never. And I, in fact, decided to dedicate my career at the Government Accountability Project to representing whistleblowers and helping whistleblowers. I never thought they would end up being criminally prosecuted, much less for espionage. But I believe in what I did. I would do it over again. And that was actually the exact answer that Edward gave us yesterday.
And is that the same for the rest of you three guys as well? Do you feel the same way? Or have you ever had quietly in some quiet moments any second thoughts? Could you tell our viewers again, just remind our viewers about what your story was?
Well, I disclosed high crimes and misdemeanors by the U.S. government while at the National Security Agency. That involved both secret surveillance and massive fraud, waste, and abuse. And no regrets at all in blowing the whistle, recognizing that I paid a very high price. Fortunately, I'm free.
That's not just for yourself, of course, it's your family and friends that are under pressure, isn't it?
Yes, and that's part of the price that you pay. It's part of the
what
sacrifice.
sort of pressure were you put onto them? Tell us a bit more about your story.
Well, it was extraordinary pressure in terms of anybody you've ever been associated with, your friends, your colleagues. They're separated. They raise questions about your integrity. They raise questions about who you are as a person, and you become very public as well.
Now, just in your story, it was revealing FBI questioning of a suspect without a lawyer, wasn't it? Again, can you tell us a bit about what you exposed?
Well, John Walker Lind, the American Taliban, was the first terrorist captured after 9/11, and there was national hysteria around his case. Ironically, he was deemed a traitor and treasonous, even though now we're apparently on somewhat better footing with the Taliban today, and we had been on great footing with them until 18 months prior. But basically, the Justice Department was willing to cut corners to prosecute people, and then I found that continuing pattern. The more secret the U.S. became and the more we grew into a surveillance state, the more people who were willing to just do their job and tell the truth and obey ethics rules were getting in trouble. So while I was under criminal investigation and put on the no-fly list, things like that I thought were very draconian. I could never have imagined in a million years that President Obama would begin indicting and prosecuting people like Thomas Drake and Edward Snowden and Bradley Manning and John Kiriakou and a number of other people under the Espionage Act, which is the most serious charge you can level against an American.
Coleen, you're an ex-FBI agent yourself, turned whistleblower. Again, if you can briefly tell our viewers a little bit about your story, how you were treated.
Well, I was also a legal counsel that taught constitutional law to FBI agents and police for 13 years. And so when you saw this 180-degree switch to the war paradigm and the use of intelligence rather than judicial process, due process, the law of interrogation, I had to speak out and explain the failures of 9/11, et cetera. So I was still employed in the FBI, and I did not get fired. I have to say that regrets that I'm aware of usually stem from the fact that people didn't speak out. The Sam Adams story itself is one of somebody who went through Vietnam and did not go public with these concerns. So it's quite the opposite, that the regret comes from not being able to get this important information out about illegal acts, risk to public safety, fraud, waste, and abuse.
Right, of the four gathered around the table, you're the only person, although I'm sure you should receive it, that hasn't received the Sam Adams Award yet. Tell us a little bit about the Sam Adams Award. What's its relevance, and a little bit of the history for our viewers?
Well, I haven't received it because I don't deserve it. When we talk about regrets, yesterday evening, Sarah Harrison, who for WikiLeaks played a key role in rescuing Ed Snowden, she was asked, does she have any regrets? She sacrificed a whole lot, okay? And she said, no. Now, me, I have regrets.
What
and
regrets?
Sam Adams had regrets. Sam Adams was an intelligence analyst who entered the CIA under John Kennedy at the same time I did. Sam was given the account to count up how many communists were under arms in South Vietnam. He found there were 500 to 600,000. He went to Saigon. The general said, no, there can't be more than 299,000. Does that specific figure give you some problems? So it's sort of like 1,429 people gassed in Syria. So Sam came back and fought the good fight. The only problem was that he fought it within channels. He went to the Inspector General of the Pentagon and of the CIA, and they put him off. And so had he spoken out at that time, he lived with the regret that he could have saved about half of the U.S. soldiers who were killed, maybe 25,000, and perhaps 1 million Vietnamese. I mean, 3 million Vietnamese. Now, I knew what Sam was going through because he shared that with me. I knew there was a cable from the command in Saigon that said, we can't go with the correct figures because we have been projecting an image of success in this war, and there is no way we could prevent the press from drawing a erroneous and gloomy conclusion. What I regret is that I didn't ask Sam Adams for a copy of that cable and took myself down to the New York Times. Now, you have to realize the New York Times was an independent newspaper at that time. They would actually print this kind of thing without checking with the government. If I had gone down there and given that cable, there's a chance, I don't know how much a chance, but there's a chance that that war would have been shortened by years. I didn't do that. And so I do have regrets, but I'm the only one here that's not a whistleblower, and I regret it still.
What was the reaction from Snowden last night when you told him that he'd won this award?
Well, he already knew because we awarded it 2 months ago. The problem was getting it to him, and it is our tradition, starting with Coleen, that we physically present this. It's sort of like an Emmy or an Oscar. What it is a candlestick holder for someone who has shown bright light into dark corners. So he knew he didn't know about the candlestick holder. He knew that he had achieved the award, and he knew we were coming. And the reception we got was just so heartwarming. Here was a person who now realizes that he has very senior people, alumni, some of them ostracized, but very senior people who speak for a lot of people still within these organizations that admire greatly what Edward Snowden has done, and hopefully will summon the courage to follow his example.
Thomas, I know we can't disclose where he is, of course. He's still kept under high security here in Russia. What were his thoughts about the future? Did he speak to you or anyone else around the table here about what he thinks is going to happen anytime soon?
Well, I think it's most what he has done is starting the conversation, the discussion, not just the United States, but around the world in terms of the direct threat to the sovereignty of individual citizens.
I think his primary concern is about reform, not about his future or what's going to happen to him, but more about having the reform that is beginning, that has begun in the United States, and more importantly, or just as importantly, around the world, because it really is a global issue to the extent that the NSA is spying on everybody, friend or foe, and that conversation needs to continue. And also, people need to realize that there's a greater issue of human rights that is brought up by asylum. And the fact that a number of people involved in his case, like Sarah Harrison, Glenn Greenwald, Laura Poitras, people are having trouble even moving around and getting where they're going. I can speak personally and say, we weren't worried about coming into your country. We are worried about getting back into our own country. And that should not be the case.
The irony is the United States has abandoned the rule of law. It's unchained itself from its very own constitution, the mechanism by which we govern ourselves. So when the U.S. abandons the rule of law and uses secret law, secret opinion, secret interpretations of law, we're in a whole new ballgame. It's Pandora's box. And this is fundamentally what
I wanted to ask you, before we run short of time, there's recent comments from the new head of MI5 in Britain. He's basically saying it's a very bad thing, whistleblowing, and it should stop. It's endangering security. What are your thoughts on that, as far as Britain's concerned? Coleen?
Well, it's ironic because I read a statement from the British solicitor back in, I think, 1774, who accused Benjamin Franklin of that very same thing, of being a vile traitor. Exactly. Benjamin Franklin leaked some truth about the fact that the British were violating the colonists' rights. If you can believe this parallel, it's just incredible. So obviously these things, people use this loyalty. Obviously, we're for integrity. Integrity must trump this kind of blind loyalty.
And there's been no evidence. We hear this in every single whistleblower case, that there's going to be blood on people's hands and it's damaged security. And there's been no demonstrable evidence other than an $8,000 payment to a Somalian, right?
Right. It's exactly the opposite. There is quite a little evidence building now that the violations of the law hurt security and lack of sharing of information. That's actually the lesson of 9/11. It was a lack of sharing of information, not only between agencies, but with the public, that enabled the 9/11 attacks. Everyone's forgotten that. So security's helped by it.
Ray, you wanted to chip in?
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment about the heads of MI5. We have a tradition where John Dearlove, who was MI6, talked about shaping the intelligence to fit the policy before Iraq. And so I would take with a grain of salt a political statement that exaggerates dangers for political purposes.
Just a final thought now on Edward Snowden again. His father's going to go and see him later on today. Just, again, a personal thing. Did he know he was coming today or not? I think he'll be meeting him today. Did he say anything about that last night?
We understand that he was aware that he had family that was planning on coming to see him at some point.
And it was in the press. I mean, it was in the Moscow Times. And when I went on the internet this morning, there was a picture. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure he was aware of that, and I think it's something that he welcomes, and I hope they have a lovely reunion. It was certainly a privilege for us to be able to meet and interact with him, and I think he enjoyed that too. And hopefully there will be more of that in the future, and people will be freer to associate and travel and do the things that normally are constitutionally protected in the U.S. and are internationally protected through various declarations of human rights, for example.
The irony is he had to escape the United States to ensure any chance of freedom. And it was not his plan to end up here. It was the United States made him stateless by revoking his passport. And Russia, to its credit, actually recognized international law and granted him political asylum.
Given everything that's happened over the last couple of years with Assange and now Snowden, et cetera, has the world become an easier place to be a whistleblower? It's a question that's often asked. What do you think? Coleen?
I don't know that it's become easier. I mean, I think that there are countries that you can still go to and speak out freely. I think in the United States, and we all have our fingers crossed right now, that there will be some reforms, because without integrity, I mean, it's the beginning of the end. You really have to have freedom of press, freedom of association. So we all have cautious optimism that we can actually have reform right now.
Look, I faced 35 years in prison. I was charged under the same Espionage Act that Edward Snowden was charged with. And fortunately, I was able to hold off the government and remain free. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here speaking with you. It's a very dangerous period in history when those who would dare speak truth to power, end up being prosecuted and persecuted.
Final thought for you, Jesselyn?
I agree. It's a dangerous time for whistleblowers in the United States, but the Snowden effect has been the opposite. We have more and more whistleblowers coming to the Government Accountability Project than we have had before. So I think if the U.S. is trying to clamp down and send a message by making an example, courage is contagious. And I really think he has had a wonderful effect for the U.S. and for the world.
Guys, we're ever so grateful for you coming. I'm afraid we're out of time now. We've got to head into a commercial break. But Jesselyn Radack, Thomas Andrews Drake, Ray McGovern, Coleen Rowley, thank you all so much for coming in and seeing us today. Much appreciated. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Coleen.